So, hi everyone. Welcome to this session. My name is Tracy Gosling and I am the EMEA Director for our Managed Business Services, and that is inclusive of audit. I'm joined today by my colleague in Collicutt Chikwende, and she is one of our principal consultants for the MBS service. So this session is all about maximising the value of audit. Now, it's a huge topic, okay? So we're going to concentrate our discussion just on a couple of points. So firstly, how can your configuration help? Now, specifically thinking about the system audit rules. Secondly, best practices. How can that help to get the most out of your process?
There are many pieces that come together to form your audit process. So that will include the creation and the communication of your travel and expense policy. It's going to include the way your claims are submitted. And as SAP Concur customers, that's going to include the way you use your rules engine when the employee submits their claim. And it will also cover the actual receipt audit as well as all post-audit activities. All of these together, they form the framework for your audit. Now, each of the different elements of the audit framework, they are helping to prevent, to detect non-compliant spend, and also to help you understand what's happening within your organisation so that you can then take action, appropriate action to adapt and enhance the process. And it's going to be an ongoing, iterative process. And because of where we are today, we wanted to think about that iterative process as a racetrack. And each time you go around the lap, maybe there's a different focus or a different task that you have in mind.
Now, we're only in here for 45 minutes, okay? But I want you to imagine that we're on a Formula race weekend. And we're going to take some key parts of the race weekend to think about the audit. So we're going to put the foot on the gas and we're going to begin. So first off, we've got the practice session. Now for the drivers, it's all around getting the feel of the car, getting used to the circuit. And for the engineers, it's all around seeing how the car works, i.e. the preparation. So for audit, this is the stage where we work about laying the groundwork. So typically, we would look at things around the, what is your expense policy that you're auditing against? What are the business needs? How does the expense policy support this? And what tools are in place to help you enforce the policy? Also think about the resources that you have in place and what roles are those stakeholders that need to play.
So next up, we have the qualifying laps. And this is where the driver is trying to get the fastest around the track so that they can give themselves the best starting position. For audit, we can relate this to the launch activities. And this is where your focus is on how to apply the tools that you've decided on, how best to get the results that you need from the equipment or the tools that you've selected. And it's about finding the right balance. When you first go live, you can be more influenced by the things that are going to help drive adoption to ensure that you've got the best user experience. Just as a race car driver, if you have a poor qualifying time, it puts you behind with more cars to overtake. A negative user experience at the start of your journey can impact wider decisions within the organisation. And so at the start, you want to be a little bit more careful about some of the tools and tweaks that you have for your configuration. But later down the line, when the process is fully embedded, now might be the time to think about how you can tweak and tighten some of those controls to drive greater policy compliance.
Right, so you know your way around the track and you are in your starting position. Now it's time for the race. Now each race will have a number of laps. And each lap will have different conditions, determining whether or not you need to make that pit stop. So here for the audit focus is about making sure that your claims are being processed accurately. It's about evaluating each audit and understanding what or if any adjustments need to be made in preparation for that next lap. Now, one thing to bear in mind is you could have a tyre blowout at any time, okay? Now, it's important to know when you've got to pull into the pit, stop, review and repair, and then continue with the race. Now, as you continue, you still are analysing and monitoring what has happened on the actions that you've taken. Now, I'm delighted to be joined today by Rosie Swery from Rolls-Royce, who has agreed to share some of her audit experiences with us today. So, Rosie, could you mind coming and joining me on stage, please? So, firstly, I really want to thank you. Thanks for joining us today and for sharing some of the feedback that you've got. So, Rosie, could you start by giving us an overview as to what your audit process looks like today?
Okay. So obviously it's a big organisation, Rolls-Royce. We've got several countries already on, but we are still ongoing. We started this in 2016, but it is an ongoing task because it's an ever-changing organisation. But yeah, currently we are using Concur. It's a massive step forward from the paper process that we were on previously, and it's helped us standardise the process globally, rather than having several different processes and systems. Yeah, it was a bit messy.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. So, Rosie, I have to admit, I actually recall being involved in the early stages of the rollout for Rolls-Royce. It was a different colleague that I was working with, but I think, if my memory serves, you've been with us about 7 years now. So I was there at the initial. Now, things must have changed, as you've said. So could you share a little bit about the changes that you've made?
So yeah, there's been quite a lot of changes. So over time, a lot of problems have been picked up where things have been missed through audit. So what we've had to do is put things in place like systematic rules. So the audit rules have been put in place. And then we've also adjusted the scripts that the auditors use to audit the planes coming through. So where things have slipped by, we've put additional questions in to make sure they don't. Where things are going through incorrectly, human error, it happens. Yeah. We've made sure things are in place to prevent that as well. So it's just tidied up the system a lot more.
Yeah, no,
there's a lot less errors going through.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think it goes back to the point that I made that you're always analysing, yes. And I think that's really important.
It's really
very, very much so. So, as you think about the future, would you be able to share a little bit about what you're currently working on?
Well, I know I did mention to you that we are trying to bring US into the 100% audit.
Yeah.
We have so many countries on Concur at the moment, but US currently aren't audited 100%. Right. It's just how it was when we went live in 2016. But with the change of management over in the US, they want to now come in line with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. We have several other countries that we are trying to also get on. We have separate entities that we're trying to bring in line with the main Rolls-Royce organisation. So we're trying to standardise everything rather than, like I says, having several different processes and systems throughout the organisation.
No, that's brilliant. That's really great. Thank you, Rosie. Welcome.
Okay, so we are going to break out for roundtables in just a moment. But we thought we would just share with you a story of non-compliance that was reported in the news recently. It was an article, and the headline was something along the lines of "Employee sacked for 2-sandwich lunch claim." And what had happened here was the employee had travelled for business. They had claimed 2 coffees, 2 lunches, 2 sandwiches, 2 pastas at some point during their trip. Now, their approving manager was a bit curious and had asked them, what had happened here. And the employee had explained that they had consumed all of the meals themselves. but they were just for themselves. And actually, why were they being asked? Because their claim was within the daily allowance limits. But the issue for this organisation, which was Citibank, they were the employers in this case, the issue for them was whether or not the employee had actually breached policy, because their policy stated that spousal travel and meals was not allowed. And eventually, what did come to light was the employee's wife had travelled with them and they had partaken in those meals. The judge in the case, and it went to tribunal, the judge in the case said, Matt, the issue was not the value of the spend, it was about the claimant's behaviour and conduct. And I think that that's a great example of how the travel expense policy and the audit process that enforces it really encompasses so much for organisations. Yes, it is about the budgetary control and spend, but it is also about fostering the right behaviours, the right attitudes, enforcing the way that an organisation does business. And so with that in mind, we'll then launch into the roundtable discussions.
Thank you.